All right, so now that we've had that basic overview of Flexbox, let's start by learning some of the properties. Before I do that, I just want to show you the code setup. If you want to follow along, which I highly recommend you do, there's a starter here, Flexbox starter, and it just has some basic styles. It has a container that we're going to work with, and then it has 5 divs. This is actually what it looks like. You don't see the divs yet, but we're going to style them and make them different sizes and arrange them in this container. So if you want to follow along, please do. You'll write all of your code in the app.css. And yes, I used inline styles, which I said is always a horrible idea, but just to keep things brief and to keep this out of the CSS file. Otherwise, I'd have to do a bunch of nth of types to get the first one to give it a different color, then the second one give it a different color, a third one. It would just be annoying. So I did it inline. Anyway, so I mentioned this previously that Flexbox consists of a bunch of properties. Well, not a whole lot, but 8 to 10-ish properties, and they're all important. They all work together. But the first one that we have to begin with is actually a property we've already seen before. It's the display property. So we've seen display, display block, display inline block. What we have not seen is the value display flex. So what I'm going to do here is just show you this container that's already on the screen. It's just a regular old section, has the idea of container. And it has a background color, it has a width, it's centered thanks to margin auto, it has a height, and it has a border. I don't even know why it has a border, but there it is. There's our container. Now before we do anything with Flexbox, I am going to select all of my divs in that container div, and give them a width of maybe 200 pixels and a height of 200 pixels. And you'll now see the background colors I added. So there are the 5 elements I created. We might make them 100 pixels or something, but there we go. This is 200 by 200, and it's totally fine if they're overflowing. As you can see on mine, they are. These are block level elements, each div, and they're inside of a section, a block level element. What I'm about to do, though, is set display to flex on this container. All right, display flex. And this is going to change everything. Take a look. Now they all line up in a nice row from left to right instead of what we had before. So this is the first really important part of Flexbox. We're basically turning it on. We want Flexbox properties on this element, our container. And you saw it changed how it behaves. Now we can cover all the other properties that rely on display being set to flex. All right, before we go any further, we need to understand some basic terminology. In Flexbox, or in this Flexbox world, when we designate some box or some container, a Flexbox, we set display to flex. In that box, there are 2 axes, the main axis and the cross axis. And these are very important for the other properties we're going to discuss. By default, the main axis goes from left to right. As you can see, our content goes from left to right. The green box is first. If we look in our markup, it's green to purple. So this is the first thing, that's the last thing. But I'm going to show you a property right now that allows us to change that. This property is called flex direction. Flex direction allows us to decide on the main axis direction in our container. So the default is flex direction row. So if I go to my container and I set flex direction to row, we're not going to see anything change whatsoever. Still left to right. It's the default. That is our main axis direction. But I can actually change that. One option is row reverse. Row dash reverse will then make our main axis go from right to left. So still horizontal, but the reverse. Row dash reverse, you'll see that they reverse. We now go from the right side over to the left. So still a row, but opposite direction. We have 2 very different options, column and column reverse. So I'll show you that. Let's do column, which is going to go from top to bottom. Our main axis goes from top to bottom. And notice my elements aren't 200 by 200 pixels. Why not? Well, I set a height on this container, 500 pixels. So if I made this, 800 pixels, they're going to grow to take up that space because I enabled Flexbox. But they're not actually 200 by 200, which is what I said they should be. Now, if I gave them enough room, if I gave them, 1200 pixels, now they're 200 pixels each, and we have extra space. But just to make it fit better, I'm going to stick with 500. It also just shows some of what Flexbox does. Okay, we can also turn that off or change this behavior. So that is flex direction column. Our main axis now goes from top to bottom. Not left to right, not right to left, but top to bottom. And then I can do column reverse, which will go from bottom to top, green up to purple. Now this is really, really important to understand up front. The terminology will take some time. That's why I spent a lot of time making these slides so you can reference them. Don't feel like you have to get it all right now, but just try and understand this concept, this main axis in every Flex container. And anything we set display to Flex on, it has a main axis. The default is left to right. We can change it to be right to left, top to bottom, bottom to top. It just determines how the content flows in this container. Okay, so that's our first property. Well, display Flex and flex direction.